Hi everyone, and welcome to the American Egg Board virtual field trip. My name is Lance Ruggi with Discovery Education, and we are here in Warsaw, Indiana at Creighton Brothers Farms. We are so excited that you're joining us today. A couple things before we kick it off. There are questions that you can submit throughout the entire broadcast. So on your screen right now, there's a little box right below where you're watching us. Submit those questions. We actually have one that was up there earlier, and it was, why are wetlands important to an ecosystem? Because that's really what we're going to be exploring today, is this whole idea of ecosystems and food webs and the critical role that wetlands play in that. So put those answers in and we'll come back to it later in the show. But let me turn it over now to our wonderful hosts and our talent for the day, Ron and Mindy Truex, who are the co-owners of Creighton Brothers Farms, and our host. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, we're really excited. We have, there are so many students on right now that are just excited to hear from you and learn from you. So why don't we dive right on in? We are here in your visitor center, your new visitor center. Can you tell us a little bit about the farm, the history of the farm, and why you built this wonderful visitor center?
Well, our farm goes back 90 years. We're 90 years old this year, since my grandpa and his brother founded the farm in this area, and the family's 5 generations out now, and so we find a lot that it's hard to translate that message as they're moving around the country, different things depending on how much they get home or not. We have a lot of story to tell. A lot of egg producers, a lot of farmers have a story to tell. So several years ago we started thinking about how do we do that, and so this is the product of all that thought process and everything and it's hopefully going to always be a work in progress here as we can add more history, as we can add more to what we can educate kids on, whether it's the crop farming side of things, the eggs, the chicken production side, adding our virtual field trips. We have all kinds of things here, the classrooms, adult tour groups, community in general. I'm hoping as the community comes and enjoys the other half of this building and what's over there, that they can come and wander around in here during the day and learn a little bit about eggs and how they get from the farm to the store.
Excellent, and it's such a wonderful, the family story here. 90 years the farm's been operating, so it's hard enough to operate a business for 1 year, let alone 90. So this question I know a lot of students had, so I'm just going to ask it right off the bat. Ron, two-part question. What's your favorite part about running a farm, owning a farm, and what's the hardest part?
Well, the easiest part is knowing that every day we come to work, and me and all the other employees, we come in and we work really hard, but we know what we're doing. We're producing food for thousands of people all over the country. We produce enough eggs every day to feed thousands of people, and that's the great part about this business. I mean, we really enjoy doing that. Now, the hard part of that is this is a 7-day-a-week business, so all of our people from time to time have to work every day of the week, and the really hard part for me is when you get into the holiday season and we have people working Thanksgiving and Christmas, but we try to rotate that, keep it around, but the 7 days a week of really hard work is the hardest part.
Okay, excellent. And I appreciate the hard work because I love eggs. So we're going to explore today really this whole idea of ecosystems, the farm ecosystem, and food webs. So I'm sure many of you have studied a little bit about food webs and talking about producers and consumers and decomposers, and really how matter and energy is transferred through a food web. And we're really going to take a deep dive into how that all plays out on the farm here. So Mindy, can you tell us a little bit about the players in the farm ecosystem?
Sure. As everybody has been learning with this and the questions we sent out earlier, if they look at the graphic on the screen, it shows the producers, which start out the show, are the corn, the soybeans, things growing out in the fields. They have to produce the energy and that protein source to get the ball rolling. Then it goes over to the primary consumers, which for us is the chickens. They eat the corn, the soybean meal, different things that help give them the energy, give them the protein to do their food production process throughout the day. And then there's the secondary consumers, all of us people that eat eggs. We get to enjoy the product of the primary consumers. And then the decomposers are kind of the saving the best for last, because they have to take all the manure and the nutrients and things that are put out in the fields, break that down and get the soils ready for the new crop of producers the next year.
Excellent. I love the graphic, and I know you've probably seen food web graphics before, but the interesting thing about today is we're going to actually show you how that all plays out specifically at Creighton Brothers Farm. So why don't we start in the beginning? So the first step of that food web really is the producers, and that's the crops, right, Ron?
Right. The crops are the first step, and in our energy chain, the crops are the producers, and that is the corn, the soybeans, and the wheat that we grow, and then that is such an important part because that is about probably 75% of what our hens eat. So then we take that ingredient to our feed mill, then we mix them together in just the proper way to provide the diet for the birds to eat that's perfectly balanced so they can not only live but go ahead and produce eggs.
Okay, and we actually had a chance in preparation for the virtual field trip. We got to work with Lori, your feed mill manager. So why don't we go out and hear from Lori and learn more about the producers.
Hi, I'm Lori. I'm the feed mill manager at Creighton Brothers Farms. The success of our farm and the foundation of our food web starts with our crops. The corn, the soybeans, the wheat are the bulk of what our hens eat. Water, sunlight, and even the type of soil in our region affects our crops and what lives here. Also, things like drought and severe weather can affect our crops, our farm, and our community. Our farm is able to produce almost 50% of the corn needed to feed our hens for the year. We rely on neighboring farmers to provide the rest of the corn, soybeans, and wheat that we need. In turn, many farms use our manure to fertilize their fields. The crops are brought into the mill and mixed in a way that the hens get what they need with every peck. We work with nutritionists to develop feed formulas to get the right amount of nutrition that our hens need to survive and lay eggs. A hen can lay over 300 eggs per year, and even laying one egg could be hard work. It takes 24 to 26 hours to lay one egg. 20 to 24 hours of that is actually creating the shell. During the night, when the hen is still sleeping, she is building that egg. She gets the materials that she needs from digesting the food. She transfers the plant matter into energy to produce the eggs. On our farm, everything is connected. We take great care to grow healthy crops, as do our neighboring farmers, because we know that our chickens rely on that, as do other animals. Thanks for stopping by to learn more about the foundation of our food web. Now back to you, Lance, for some student questions.
So welcome back, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that. So we're going to talk a little bit more about these producers because they really are. I mean, that's where it all starts, and they play such an important role in taking those abiotic factors like sunlight and turning it into energy. And ultimately, turn it into energy. We make feed for the hens. So, but there's not just one type of feed, right?
Right. The chickens we have to work with from day-old baby chicks through their complete lay cycle as they age and things. So what we have to do is have well over 60 or more different formulas or recipes for different feeds, because when they're growing, they need the energy and things just to, all they do out at a growing house is just eat and sleep and grow, and kind of like, we like to call them like the little teenagers. And then as they mature and get ready to lay eggs, the formulas all have to change to add calcium for eggs and egg production and keep them, they have much different energy needs. So we have to make sure that, as Lori said, when they're out there producing those 300 or so, give or take, eggs a year, we have to make sure they not only have now the needed energy and resources to do the egg production, but also enough to just keep them sustaining their life out in the laying house.
Okay, and I guess oftentimes too in this ecosystem, it really depends on, you know, the number of abiotic factors you have, like the soil composition, the sunlight, water, like the availability of those, and it probably varies. It ultimately does impact, you know, what you can do from year to year. Ron, can you talk a little bit about how that plays out here?
Sure, Lance. One of the biggest variables that we have to deal with, we know at the beginning of a year how much our chickens are going to eat. So we try to plant enough crop ground to grow that grain for them. But what we don't know is when we plant the corn, we don't know if it's going to rain, if it's not going to rain. We don't know if it's going to be cold summers, warm summers, or extremely hot summers. And all those things will work against the optimum yield. So anything that doesn't go exactly right diminishes the yield we get. And so that will reduce the feed supply that we have to make the food for our hens.
Excellent, excellent. So why don't we jump out to some student questions? And before we do that, actually, just a reminder, put your questions in throughout the show here. But we did ask a question in the beginning, and what's the important role of wetlands for an ecosystem? So make sure you get that question in, because we're going to come to it here in a little bit. But first question that we got in, and Ron, I'm going to give this one to you. Mr. Bright's class in Parkview Prep, Victorville, California, thank you for your question, wants to know what can happen to the eggs if the chickens do not eat the right foods?
Oh, the answer is simple and complicated. If the chicken doesn't eat the right food, let me see if I can show you this. Our chickens, a chicken weighs about 3 pounds and eats 4 ounces of feed a day. And a chicken won't lay an egg unless she has enough energy and all the reserves in her body to keep her alive and lay the egg. So we have like 10 different questions we ask every week. And we have to go through a checklist that each different flock of chickens has a different requirement. So what we have to do with this 4 ounces of feed, because we have to make sure that every bird on our farm at all the different ages, laying all the different sizes of eggs, gets exactly what she needs in this and enough to take care of herself and lay an egg. So it's a very complicated, scientific. We have nutritionists and companies we work with for additives and all kinds of things to make sure that the chickens get exactly what they want.
So a lot of science behind that 4 ounces right there. And there's also a lot of math. So to please all of the teachers, including my wife who is watching now, teaching 6th grade, and a math teacher, I have a math challenge for you. And all the students now are booing. You can hear them virtually. So here's your math challenge. It's a fun one. And we'll have you submit it, and we'll see who got it right at the end of the show. Hens weigh
3 pounds.
On average 3 pounds, and they eat 4 ounces,
4
of
ounces
feed?
of feed a day.
So what percentage of their body weight do they eat per day? They weigh 3 pounds, they eat 4 ounces. Give that a shot, submit it in the text box there, and we'll check it at the end of the show. So there's your math challenge for the day.
Good.
And you can blame Ron for that one. All right, so good questions coming in. Let's take another one. And Mindy, I'll give you this one. Jocelyn from Wetland Middle School in Maine wants to know, how are the eggshells formed and where do they come from?
Well, as it showed on the graphic earlier, when they showed the chicken and the insides, the yolks fall off from the clutch that's inside of them. And as one drops off, it starts to form the whites and the yolks, or the white, all the different layers of whites around the yolk. And then after that, that takes a certain amount of time. Then the majority of her time during the day is spent putting on the shell. So she needs lots of good calcium, phosphorus, all the elements that were in the feed Ron showed. We got to make sure they have all the right elements in there to put on a good strong shell.
Okay, because ultimately we have, the producers, and we need so many of those to get things going, but the stars of the show here are your primary consumers.
Absolutely.
Right, so why don't we go out and learn from Josh Crabb a little bit more about these primary consumers.
Hi, I'm Josh Crabb, and I'm the Technical Services Manager for our farms. Our hens get the energy they need for laying eggs from the feed that they eat. That includes corn, soybeans, wheat, and other important nutrients. We take great care in choosing what our hens eat as well as how they live. Creighton Brothers Farm is committed to the highest quality animal care because we understand that a healthy hen is critical to the success of our business, the overall health of our farm food web, and to our community. That is why Creighton Brothers was one of the first farms to be a part of the United Egg Producers Animal Care Certified Program. This is a program that protects the health of our hens by guaranteeing nutritious, hormone-free feed, clean water, and fresh air at all times. As part of our commitment to our animals, we also installed a state-of-the-art ventilation system with cool cells in our hen houses that ensure the best environment and air quality for our birds. This also helps us keep the birds healthy and cool in the summer heat. After 90 years of animal husbandry, our care continues to improve today. Our farms are scattered in the countryside to minimize the threat of diseases. In addition, farm managers care for the flocks daily by providing fresh feed, water, clean air, and making sure all of our systems are working properly. In the past, most people were able to keep small flocks of hens in their backyard to produce eggs and meat. As more people moved to the city, fewer people were able to raise their own hens, and there were not enough eggs to meet the demand. So egg farmers had to find a way to increase the size of their flocks, lower their mortality rates, and produce enough eggs to meet the demands. Many of the systems found in our colony houses today are a result of trying to meet those demands, like the high-quality ventilation systems, perch spaces, the nest boxes, and access to feed and water. As a fifth-generation farm, the sustainability of our farms and the health of our hens is very important to us. We take great care of our hens because we know they are a vital part of our food web system and the success of our business. Thank you for joining me to learn more about the primary consumers in our farm food web, our hens. Now let's go back to Lance to answer some of your questions.
Welcome back, everyone. So hope you enjoyed that. Our hens are the primary consumers, and they rely so much on the plants, the producers, to get this whole thing working, the food web, the ecosystem on the farm. Can you talk a little bit more about how much your primary consumers, your hens, rely on those producers and how that all kind of plays out?
Yeah, like Ron was talking about earlier, that if we have a harsh winter, a drought in the summer, it all can affect that protein content in the corn. So the one thing we really have to watch is that through the corn, the soybean meal, and the other factors, that the energy the bird needs, the protein the bird needs, the hens out there doing the work to get those 300 give or take eggs a year. It really takes a lot of energy, and so we always have to make sure that the corn, they always talk about the protein in the eggs and how great that is, but you got to lead up to that. You got to make sure they're getting the good diet out of all those.
And they lay how many eggs per year? About
300 give or take.
So 300
depending
give or
on
take.
age.
And so how long does it take approximately? Because there's a lot of energy. It's like almost every day.
Right. If they lay 6 out of 7 or 5 out of 7 eggs a week, in a day, 6 or 7 eggs a week. It takes them 24 to 26 hours in a day to put all that whites around the yolk, get the shell done. And then the shell, actually, the fascinating thing, we learned one time, somebody that came here to help us just with our eggshells and how to make sure they're always good. And she taught us that it was 20 hours from the time they start till the time they lay the egg is just in the shell. Wow. And so it was really fascinating to find out that, so all the time they're sleeping, or from the time they lay the egg, they take a little time to just kind of rest and recuperate and get ready to start all over again. So we always have to make sure that they have all that, and the energy need that they have to not only their sustainability as well as producing the egg. It's a big factor of making sure they can keep being productive and healthy and everything in their environment.
And so the producers, again, I mean, those plants and getting the right amount of feed and the right type of feed so that they're healthy, because it takes a lot of energy to do that again and again every single day. So let's move from primary consumers to secondary consumers. So secondary consumers, us, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of benefits and energy in those eggs for us, right?
Absolutely. Eggs, as everyone always hears on all the great ads and things out there, eggs are great.
They're incredible.
They're incredible. Yes, they are. I won't sing for you. But yeah, with the 6 grams of protein in an egg, I mean, how can you go wrong? Then you throw in how many vitamins, minerals, all the nutrients, everything that's in an egg. I always like to throw out to my friends sometime about how there's one vitamin they're missing in an egg. So you have to drink your orange juice with your egg to get that vitamin C. But other than that, the vitamin A, D, B12, B1, the riboflavin, phosphorus, the list goes on and on. All the things that are in an egg that just make it downright incredible.
And ultimately transferring that energy from producer to primary consumer to us, the secondary consumer. So let's take a few more questions here. And Ron, I'm going to give this one to you. So Carter from Briarwood Middle School. So thank you, Carter. Why are there 2 egg yolks in 1 egg sometimes?
Okay, Carter, what happens when a bird is very young and comes into production? Sometimes when Mindy referred to, on that one graphic we could see the yolks that were in the bird up in the top of her back. And a bird will normally drop 1 yolk into the oviduct and make that work. And sometimes on a very young bird that's she's not really mature yet and she's trying to learn what to do, she'll accidentally drop 2 yolks. And so if you go to the supermarket and you buy a dozen jumbo eggs and you find 1 double-yolked egg in that carton, there's a good chance you'll find 2, because that dozen probably came from the same flock. They were all young, and they were all birds just coming into production, learning what to do. And as they get older, when you buy jumbos, you'll find 1 yolk, because the older birds know what they're doing much better, and they don't make mistakes like that.
We've had some people call before or email me or something, and they're so excited because they just bought a dozen extra large, or especially a jumbos sometimes, and they're all double yolkers. And so they let us know that how they felt like they just got the grand prize. They got the 2-for-1.
Excellent, excellent. It's like they want to, you should have told them, come on down, you want a t-shirt or something, right? Visit this wonderful center here, which by the way, if you're ever in Warsaw, this is a great place to visit. So another question, we'll give this one to Ron as well, and then I have one for Mindy. Mrs. Bowman's 4th and 5th grade students in Parma, Ohio, want to know how many different types of chickens are there and which ones are the best at laying eggs or producing eggs?
Okay, there are many chickens out there, and they all do different things. And so what we do on our farm, and those birds are all good at what they do, but what we do is go to our customers, and our customers, if they want white eggs, we buy the kind of chicken that lays white eggs. If they want brown eggs, we buy that kind of chicken. And depending on whether they're in an extra large egg market or a medium egg market, there's different strains that lay different sizes of eggs. So all the different birds, they're all good at what they do. We just have to buy the bird that's good for what our customers want.
Excellent, thank you. Great question. Mindy, question for you. Mrs. Particelli's class, period 6 class, Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, wants to know, can you tell us what a typical day for the hens looks like?
Yeah, they, like we've kind of been talking about, they do a lot of eating, sleeping, depends on the age of the bird. As you can see on the screen now, you can enjoy our little hen cam. We took this out at one of our farms. As you can see, they're very curious. And the curtain part off to the side, the red part, that's where they can go in, and it's a little enclosed area that they can actually go in there and lay their eggs. And so they have areas there that they can roost and they can kind of relax after laying their eggs, or they preen, they clean themselves, so they just kind of, they hang out in there and eat and sleep and work on that good old egg production inside.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that. So keep those questions coming. Put them right in that text box there. We're going to get to those. We're going to get to the math question, the wetlands question. These are excellent questions. So we've talked about producers, we've talked about consumers, but I think another important point of all this, as you guys have taught me, honestly, about the farm ecosystem is, the natural resources and conserving natural resources, because that's, what a critical role they play ultimately in making this whole food web go around. So the question that came in, and I'll give this to Ron, from Mrs. Hoodie's 7th grade class in Pine Valley, California, that really sets this whole thing up is, they asked, how does your farm impact the local ecosystem?
Oh, there was just a study released last year that was a 50-year study of how the carbon footprint and how we're reusing or using less and producing more, and the agricultural community has done a fantastic job in the last 50 years to use fewer and fewer resources and produce more and more things from those resources. And one of the things like we do is our manure. Instead of going out and buying tons of commercial fertilizer, we take the manure the chicken produces, put it out on the land, and then it puts the nutrients in the soil. And so we do that on our farm, and then we provide the same the manure for our neighboring farmers. And so in our community, we contribute a big part to using less and less commercial fertilizer.
Okay, excellent. And this one surprised me, so I'm going to ask this question on all the students and teachers' behalf. Because I thought, what's the most important resource here? And it's like, well, you think the hens, they're pretty important. You think the crops are important. What's your most important natural resource?
Well, between the land and especially the water, whether it's water that's coming off our lagoon system that we're able to recycle back out onto the crops, but the land and those decomposers out there that are always keeping the ground well prepped for the next year. But the water's huge, and in our county we have a lot of lakes and rivers. We have the Tippecanoe River that starts in our county and makes its way down through the Wabash down to the Ohio River, and we're very proud of the fact that it's one of the cleanest. It's been noted and recognized as one of the cleanest rivers in the nation.
Excellent. So you guys do a really impressive job of your wastewater treatment facility. So why don't we go out and take a look about the wastewater treatment facility with Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Miller, Technical Services Manager, and I'm here at our wastewater treatment facility. We use water to grow our crops that we use to feed our hens and to process and wash the eggs at our plant that our hens produce. We understand that water is a precious natural resource, and we want to do our part to help conserve and reuse water. Well, how does it work? First, it goes into a holding tank that is used to help mix the cleaning solutions, any broken egg, and any soil into the tank before it is then pumped once an hour into the lagoon. We want to help make the lagoon work as efficiently as possible, so we moderate the amount going into it. This lagoon is 28 feet deep and full of bacteria. The bacteria helps digest the broken egg and soil in the wastewater, much like a cow's stomach. We add more bacteria to the system because that digestion is what helps clean the water. As you can see, the gray area on the lagoon is where it is bubbling up from the digestion, showing that the lagoon is doing its job. Next, it flows from the anaerobic lagoon into our constructed wetlands. The constructed wetlands utilizes pea gravel, reeds, and bacteria to help purify and take the debris out of the water. The reeds play a crucial role by putting oxygen into the system and uptaking nutrients, while the pea gravel helps filter the water and slow it down so the bacteria and reeds have time to do their part. After the wetlands, it flows into our holding lagoon. This lagoon is 3 football fields long by 2.5 football fields wide and is 4 feet deep when it's completely full. By the time it gets to this stage, the water is clean and ready to utilize on our crops. We periodically test each step of the lagoon to make sure that it is all functioning properly. We also test the holding lagoon every week that we apply the water to know how much nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium is going onto our field. We then test the soil to make sure that we use all that information to use the correct amount of fertilizer to grow our crops. Thank you for taking the time to learn a little more about our wastewater treatment area here at Creighton Brothers that we utilize to grow our corn, to feed our hens that lay our eggs.
Welcome back. So Steve talked to us about how you guys use this 3-step biological process to treat your water and clean your water and recycle your water. Mm-hmm. How much water do you reuse each year?
With all the wastewater that goes into the lagoon and the rainfall, we're able to recycle back out to the crops about 30 million gallons a year.
30 million gallons a year. And I sense
That's
like
a
another
lot of water.
Yeah, it's like another math question coming on. But
I'm not math. I'll opt over here.
All right, so we saved you. No more math questions, but make sure you actually submit your answer to that first one because we're coming to it soon. All right, so one of the steps in your process is this artificial wetlands, and we're actually going to bring some students out to kind of talk about that and model it and have Ron explain it some more. But before we do that, since we're talking about wetlands now, let me jump out and see if I can share one of the answers. There's so many good ones here. Okay, so Miss Iverson, congratulations. Miss Iverson, 6th grade class in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Wow. So we have folks from all over. So why are wetlands important? An important role in the ecosystem. Wetlands are important for ecosystems, for plant growth, animal survival, and the supporting of habitats for the animals. So pretty nice answer. I think you nailed it. So let's jump back in here and let's talk about the artificial wetlands. So we saw it in the video, but I think we have some stills to kind of talk it through. Can you kind of just explain the process to the kids?
Sure, and as you can see on the screen here in a little bit maybe, the aerial photo that we showed, the lagoon off to the left-hand side at the top is where the water first goes, and as Steve explained to you, that lagoon is very deep, and we limit the amount of oxygen that goes in that lagoon so the decomposing begins. And then after about 20 days, that water will overflow into the artificial wetlands that you see off to the right side in those 5 different cells. And each one of those cells is a little bit lower than the other one. And what happens there, they're very, very shallow. And the water travels across pebbles and little rocks, and we have reeds and cattails and all kinds of things in there that will take the water up, and then as all that stuff keeps moving, it keeps bringing in oxygen, the plants take up the water, and it just keeps cleaning that water as it continues to move from the left to the right toward the large lagoon.
Okay, and then it ultimately ends up in that large lagoon?
After about 30 days.
After about 30 days.
Yes.
All right, and if you think about, I mean, you know, that wetland that goes over pebbles, like think about a fish tank and, you know, putting pebbles on the bottom, it helps filter. So we actually have a hands-on activity to help you guys see it, and then this is something you should do in your class, honestly, or at home. So we have a couple students from Chicago Public Schools to help us with this. So ladies, would you mind coming on out? How are you?
Good, and
You excited?
Yeah.
All right, so why don't you introduce yourselves to the hundreds of thousands of kids that are watching right now, so absolutely no pressure.
My name is Taj Jones. I'm from Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences.
My name is Gianna Ferguson, and I also attend Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences.
All right, so pretty interesting school that you guys go to, the agricultural school, so thanks for joining us today. We're going to kind of model for all of the students and teachers the activity that you guys did yesterday. All right, so you can construct your own wetlands using things that you probably have in your class or in your school or get them at the dollar store, right? So we can use sand, some soil, some pebbles, some rocks. Okay, Ron talked about that. It's an important part. And then we also just have some peat moss. We have some just sponges. And the idea here is that, this is an inquiry activity. Set all of these materials out and have your students, based on what they learned today and what they've researched, have them construct their own wetland. So you guys actually constructed yours. So let's bring those out. All right, Gianna, there's yours. Why don't you just, and we'll get an aerial shot here, talk us through what you did and why you did it. Why is your wetland set up the way it is?
Okay, so I have some rocks and pebbles of different sizes along the perimeter here, and I have bigger rocks and because water could go in between them if I only used big rocks. And I also have some smaller ones because if I only use smaller rocks, then the water could go over it. So if you use a mixture of both, then it can stop whatever excess is coming through and the water can safely go through. Also, I have some moss and soil. Also, I have some bird seeds to kind of represent what a real wetland would look like. And that's how I set it up.
Okay, fantastic. So there's your wetland. And then Taj, tell us about yours.
Okay, so under mine is like you all see the dirt and the soil, and that's how I think of a wetland, and that's from my prior knowledge. And on top you have the sponges and everything, and the sponges is to, soak up the water, and after you soak up the water with the sponge, you squeeze it out into a separate container to get your desired effect. And also, like Gianna said, the rocks are there for the free-flowing water.
Okay, and I like how your sponges are almost, so you talked about the reeds pulling that water up, so that actually kind of represents part of what the role of the reeds do. So once you have it set up, okay, you have the kids work on it in small groups of 2 or 4 or something, they put their wetlands together. Let's test it out, because we have to test you, right? So we're going to put some wastewater on it, and Mindy, what do we have in our wastewater?
Yes, we've used some different liquids, and the secret ingredient to get the little sludge-like look down here would actually be Oreos. So any kind of ingredients you would have around home you can use to kind of make yourself up some liquid. And with the oil, it's kind of separating. Get our sludge up there so we can pour it on.
All right, so let's test these wetlands out. So this is the water that would be coming ultimately from your first lagoon.
From our, this would be like coming from stage 1 or into stage 1, and we pour some liquid on there, and then some on this one into the ooh.
Oh, nice. That's some good sludge.
Oh, fun. And so, and like as Ron pointed out, as they can tip those up to show, because our stage 2, he said it was in tiers and in things. And as opposed to the few seconds we take on this, that is a whole 30-day process to get the water from the wastewater standpoint of stage 1 down to clean water ready to use. So it looks like, if you can see a little bit down there towards the end, that they might be able to see more if you're
So ultimately too, I mean, you get that, you angle them up and set these on a book or something just to give it a little bit of a grade or a tilt to model exactly like Ron talked about. And then at the bottom, you could even drill a hole and then see what water comes out, and you can kind of see which group, got the cleanest water at the end, right? Very cool. Thank you guys for doing that. Since you're out here, do you have some questions for our experts?
I do. So earlier you had some footage and you showed aerial shots of the wetlands. So how did you do that?
Oh, okay. Here.
This is really neat.
A lot of science and technology go into this whole process. So they used a drone to capture the footage. All right, so in addition to on the farm itself, all the science and technology, just to actually produce this, the broadcast, we used the drone. So that's a great question.
That's
all right.
fascinating.
How about you, Taj?
Okay, I do have a question. For your eggs, what are the qualifications that they have to go through to get to the grocery store?
Okay, so your question is how do we know that the eggs that get to the store are really good eggs? All the eggs come from our chicken houses, and they go through a washing process, and then I'll see if I can show you. They go through after they're washed, they go through all kinds of different things, and they go through a candling process. I'll see if I can make one here for you. If you take the egg like this and you shine bright light through it, you can see that the outside of the egg is excellent, and then you can also see that inside there's nothing there. So you have everything. You can see the inside and outside of that egg is perfect to put in the carton to go to the customer. So the candling is a very critical part because it shows you inside and outside of the egg before we take it to the customer.
Excellent. They do that for every single egg. That is impressive. All right. So before I forget, let's jump back to the math question. All right. Do you guys know the answer? Don't tell them if you do. Do you know the answer?
Yeah.
Okay, you got it? Okay. All right, so
Smart girls.
there were a bunch of you that submitted, so thank you. I'll call out a couple. Mrs. C's class in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, St. Francis de Sales Catholic School in Las Vegas, 8.3% of their weight. So 8.3% of their weight. But then, Ron, there's another interesting thing you told me during the break is that they eat, what was it, how many ounces?
4
4
ounces.
ounces they eat, which is 8% of their weight that they eat, but then
We didn't want to make the math question too hard, so instead of doing it all, we thought if you eat 4 ounces of feed a day, which is 8% of your body weight, and then you lay 2 ounces of egg, that is almost 4% of your body weight. So you realize that you only net to take care of the chicken, just 4% of her body weight a day goes to her, and the rest goes to produce an egg.
it's pretty good. So thank you guys for your responses. We have time for maybe one last question. So let's see. Oh, you know what? I'm going to ask this one because we've been talking about producers, consumers, a couple different types of consumers, primary consumers, secondary consumers. And the graphic, and you talked about it, Mindy, but the question that came in, perfect timing by the way, Spring Hill, Tennessee, Mrs. Knight's 6th grade class. Can you tell us a little bit about decomposers on your farm ecosystem?
I guess we did save the best to last. The decomposers are the main part of the natural biological process that takes products and puts them back in a form that can be used again. And so the decomposers in our lagoon system are what cleans the water up so we can use it to irrigate our corn. In our manure application that we use on the farm, the decomposers go into the manure, they break it all down into the different nutrients, it's absorbed back into the soil, and then our corn crop can take it out of the soil and grow another crop of corn. So without the decomposers, the whole circle just falls apart. So it's the decomposers, I mean, no one is more important than the other, and the decomposer is absolutely critical in this process.
Excellent.